Welcome back to Garden Like a Guru Show, and I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, a permaculture instructor, and I'm with my lovely co-host, the garden guru herself, Sarah Bradshaw. And to start the show off, we're going to be looking at what is auspicious to do in the garden this week, according to where all of the moon and the planets are in the sky. So welcome to the show, Sarah. What's up this week?
Well, a lot of smoke.
Yeah, a lot of smoke, a lot of fires.
A lot of smoke, a lot of fires. So first off, don't be foolish out there. You know, get out early in the morning, get the work done, get out of the heat of the day. If you've got breathing issues, please keep those kind of things in mind. Unfortunately, I was hoping for a summer, and it looks like we're getting a fire season, which is why later on in the show, we are going to be talking about what to do about water, because I'm sure it's becoming an issue for a lot of people, and it will be as it unfolds. But okay, so today we're still in the second quarter. The moon's coming up to full. It'll be full Friday. And but right now we're still in the second quarter. Saying goodbye to Scorpio about 9:30 this morning, and we don't move into. We've actually moved into Capricorn. I just realized, yeah, we're past that 2:00 in the afternoon window now, so we're fresh into Capricorn. It's an Earth sign. It's the second quarter. Might be able to get away with planting a few things if you need to get things in the ground. I just threw in a bunch of stuff while the moon was in Scorpio a couple of days ago, because this heat hit my beans right at some of my bush beans right when they were at that really fragile first and second true leaf state, and they died. And it's kind of a little too late to replant them, but I had some other plants that I was looking for a home with. So, you know, if you've got that situation, you got a little bit of a window here till about Wednesday afternoon where you can utilize the Sagittarius energy and get them into the ground. Then on Wednesday, we move into Capricorn. Capricorn is really good in terms of root crops. A little late to be planting root crops, you know. There's a few exceptions. There's a couple of types of carrots that you can get away with planting this late in the year, and you'll be harvesting them super late in the fall. But on Friday, the moon goes full, and I'm afraid that's going to kind of put paid to any kind of planting that we see until we get to past the dog days of August.
Okay. Dog days of August.
Yeah.
Cool drinks, hammocks, and swimming in the lake.
Yes. Don't do much. It gets hot.
Yeah.
Of course, the 1st of August, that first full moon early in August, that's the Celtic festival of Lunasa or Lammas, or has a few other names. But Lu in the Irish Celtic religion was the sun god. So Lunasa was the night of the sun god. And it was the one festival that even in rainy Ireland, England, and Scotland, you could be pretty much assured you could party outside all night long. That it was
like a good drunken time to me.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Fabulous movie called Dancing at Lunasa, very obscure with Meryl Streep in it, set in Ireland, really worth watching.
Right.
But Lunasa is approaching as we come to the end of July. So we've got the full moon coming up on the 23rd, and the very next new moon will, of course, be that lunar Lunasa, which will be actually the 8th of August. So we got to get past that whole first week or two of August before we can even think in terms of planting much of anything again. It's too hot, it's too dry. We don't have good moon phases at all.
The hammock up.
Yeah. Yeah, and keep in mind that we've already moved into harvest time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're harvesting. A lot of greens are at the stage of you better be replanting them because the ones you planted early in the spring are probably long gone, bitter, setting seeds, consumed already. You know, the options are myriad, but their chance of survival, you know, is slim. So hopefully you've been replanting your greens and keeping up on that. Herbs are kind of at their prime. The heat that's coming on now and the moon phases that are coming on now, you're going to see some of your herbs burning out. You know, just the heat and the lack of moisture is going to, in this area, is going to really get to them. So, you know, get on harvesting them and drying them if you want them at their absolute primo. Oregano is very lovely. Dill as a lovely fern is really only harvestable now. Very soon you'll be into that stage where you're harvesting dill and getting, you know, hefty stock for pickle making and seeds, but not that fine ferny herb that you want in your salads and some of your soups. So, you know, by all means, get those gather baskets out there, get those brown paper bags going. This is, you know, this week we are seriously moving into harvest time. Yep. And, you know, strawberries are gone. Raspberries are probably doing their thing right about now. Blackberries are coming on. Haskell's are done. Um, Saskatoons are done. You know, cherries are pretty much finished in a lot of places.
We're just finishing ours.
Yep. Yep. There's a few late varieties, but not very many. We're starting to see transparent apples coming on. Apricots, you know, my daughter's working in the orchard world and they're picking apricots like crazy right now. So, you know, the planting window is gone. We're into full summer. And of course, that means harvest time. And flowers. This is the time of year to really appreciate those flowers. You know, you've got those beautiful purple and white peonies that every time I see them, they just astound me, you know, planted.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the begonias, the summer roses that are still coming on, and your hollyhocks. I mean, you know, there are a lot of summer flowers that are just now really starting to come on and bloom. Your gloriosa daisies, blanket flower, gumweed, feverfew, bergamot. You know, and of course at your place, the hollyhocks.
Yes.
The gladiolus. I mean, is there anything more splendid than a spire of gladiolus? You know?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Maybe an entire wall of cosmos. You know, there are, this is the time of year to really get out and love those summer flowers. And take note of what the butterflies and the hummingbirds are buzzing around in your garden, because those are the things you're going to want to plant for them to help them survive longer and live healthier. I mean, I use organic cane sugar in the water when I mix up hummingbird food, but I try not to lose sight of the fact that it's an artificial way to feed them. And it's going to be so much better if they can get honeysuckle, if they can get nasturtiums, if they can get roses, if they can get peonies, if they can get all those various flowers that really feed them well. Nasturtiums are a huge one. Nasturtiums have a little extension on the flower that is almost the exact size and shape of a hummingbird beak. And the hummingbird goes right into that big trumpet, puts the beak right down into there and gets a real good shot of nectar. And it's one of those wonderful magical adaptations that the whole genetic selection world has brought to us. So plant nasturtiums for your hummingbirds. That this is the time of year that they should be blooming like absolute crazy. So Friday, we get that full moon. By the time it goes full, we're in Aquarius. And being in Aquarius takes us right out pretty much to the end of the week. We do transit into Pisces in the final few hours of Sunday, but really most of us, I think, will pretty much be asleep. So yeah, we've got a nice week of rest, relaxation, a little bit of harvesting, and mostly just like really getting into enjoying your garden.
Oh, yeah, and picking a few herbs and drying them, and yeah.
Yep.
And making up some more summer drink that you were teaching us how to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, making those sun teas. This is the time of year for it. Get into the rhythm, set it out in the morning, bring it in at night, strain it, sweeten it, pop it in the fridge so it's chilled and for you to drink, and set out a new one in the morning. It's just lovely. Now, I have one friend who does one little addition to that. He adds vodka.
I don't know if I could get through the day with vodka.
I don't think I could, but it's his format.
Maybe the afternoon, but I don't know, it would be siesta time.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're smoking and the choking.
Smoking and choking. So this means that water is scarce. So you're going to talk about water, right?
Yes, and a lot of places are already on sprinkling restrictions, water reduction programs, where I am, where I'm sort of dependent on well or bringing water in, I'm very grateful that I was fully aware of the water hurdle when I put the garden in this spring, because it dictated greatly what I did and how it's likely to play out. So, of course, that's the very, very first step, is to realize that, take note of what water challenges you're running into this year, because it's too late now to go back and replant in the spring. Okay, but you're going to want to take note of what's doing well, what's not doing well, because dry summers and summers of a lot of smoke are not as rare as they used to be. I remember one large forest fire in our region from my teens in the mid-70s. It burnt 30-some houses in Salmon Arm, and, it was devastating. In this century, I can't remember a summer without numerous forest fires.
It's an exponential curve that's getting worse and worse. So
yeah, so the water, the need to restrict and be careful and judicious with our water use is not going to go away. As a matter of fact, it's likely to go up. So pay attention in your garden to what you really had to pour water to, what's done well, what struggled, and next year refer to those notes. And I'm going to put in a big plug here for xeriscaping at this point in time. And part of the reason I'm going to pound that drum a little bit is the timing. Xeriscaping and planting in a way where you're using a lot of native plants and you are planting to use no water at all once it is established is best done in the fall. So when you plan to do a xeriscape design and you plant a xeriscape garden, you actually plant it the summer before, you plant it in the fall, you water it and maintain it the following spring and summer, and after that, you leave it alone.
Oh.
So this is the time of year where you have to think in terms of xeriscaping. Now, by and large, what you're doing with xeriscaping is you're going to be replicating a forest floor. So you will not be looking at lawn. You will not be thinking green at all. It is not a lawn. It is a chip yard. It is a, you know, dirt and litter, leaf litter and wood chip floor. It is not usually a lawn. However, you can achieve amazing yards with this, and you can make yourself lovely little seating areas, lovely little planting areas. In no way does this have to be unattractive and difficult to live with. As a matter of fact, the lack of maintenance and work can make it incredibly delightful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that little area we have under the trees, I don't know if Michael's had a chance to use it, but there's a table there and chairs. I mean, it's a nice little place to in the shade, right? It's just
It's lovely.
yeah.
When I go up to Seymour Arm and spend summers like I used to, the kids were out on the beach. I was always up in that swath of trees between the beach and the roadway. You know, it was cool, it was lovely. You could get the breeze off the lake. So, you know, when you're talking about xeriscaping, your lawn or your kind of walking area is likely to be wild strawberries that, you know, have formed a really thick mat, as they will do if given just 2 or 3 years to acclimatize. It will be creeping plants from the forest floor. There will be a lot of indigenous plants and trees. You'll see more Saskatoons, ocean spray, arunculus, you know, penstemons, some of your nightshades. These are all very, very lovely plants, but once they're established, they require nothing of you, which, you know, is you know, there are so many advantages to this. And of course, if you're looking at maximum water conservation, absolute maximum lack of concern about water, you simply can't mean xeriscaping. Xeriscaping means you're growing it without ever needing to irrigate it or water it beyond that first year of getting it established. So that's my plug for the best water conservation technique of all is going with a xeriscaping method of planting. Now,
Does it kind of look like a decent lawn, or is it going to look like a hayfield?
it's not going to look like a hayfield because you keep the mulch products that you're using, be it bark or finely chopped other matter, like you can use, like your place you used all the trimmings from your trees and that. And does it look like an ugly hayfield?
No, it doesn't. It looks really quite nice and calm and cool, and a place that you might want to sit, right? Or
Yeah.
I know.
And how much moisture is in that?
Oh, an amazing amount of moisture. You just, take a shovel in there and it's just like, conservation of water is quite amazing, right?
Yeah, it is. And so, that is the thing that we can take from xeriscaping and move into other gardening techniques is that mulch layer. That instead of a layer of sod that is consuming water and needing water, and if it doesn't get water, it dies and it looks terrible, and the soil gets all compacted and hard. And then when the rain lands on it, it splashes off like it's rock, and it, runs down the hill, and it, gets huge rivulets. And you go, well, like we really needed that water, but like there it's gone. Instead of that scenario, you take that idea of that lovely, mulchy, evenly spread out forest floor concept that you have in xeriscaping, and you take that little one component of mulch and you move it out of that zone into all of your garden spaces.
Right.
And so you have mulch on your flower beds, you have mulch around your strawberries, you are using mulch, be it hay, be it grass clippings, be it leaf litter, be it chopped up paper that you're wetting down initially and covering with other stuff. You're putting that down and you're creating that layer that only the top little bit dries out. Everything else underneath stays moist. So, you know, you've got moisture trapped there. But not only that, your dirt hasn't become parched and dried out under that mulch. So when it does rain, it absorbs. It doesn't come down and hit this dry, dead dirt and run off, creating rivers down your. We all know the river down the driveway routine. The water can't soak in. It's all compacted gravel and it runs away. Well, when that starts happening in your yard and God forbid in your garden, yeah, it's fatal.
Yeah, I mean, all of South India, where I worked in Oroville International Community, we worked on what they call tapapati, which is what you're talking about, where the rain comes down. It bounces 4 inches off the soil because it's like concrete. You got to get out there with a pickaxe and break it all up, and then you got to put straw and goat manure and hay, and and to get a little patches started. We did it in Mexico too. Literally, to reverse what Sarah's talking about is a real struggle, right?
Oh, it is. It is. And, I grew up at the time when there was a lot of making fun of India for the sacred cows that are wandering everywhere. People are dying of starvation, but they've got these cows walking around and eating everything, and they won't kill them because they're sacred. And when I had that set right for me by a farmer from India who explained that without the cow, you don't have the cow poop. Without the cow poop, you don't have the food for the plants that you want to eat. Without the cow poop and the cow bedding and straw, you don't have the mulch that you need to put on the ground so that you can even work it and plant seeds in it. And, without the cow to walk around in the fields and actually break up the crust on that soil, you don't have any way to get the water to penetrate into that soil. And of course, the cow is sacred. Without the cow, how would we even make a farm here?
Right. And then one more thing, Sarah, was happening to listen to CBC where they're talking about cows in India on the way to town this morning. And the other thing is cow dung was like for 90% of the fuel in India is cow dung. And why is cow dung so good, dry cow dung? Because it's a slow, steady heat. That's why tandoori and all the Indian dishes.
Maybe kind of like buffalo chips were all over the prairies where...
Exactly. It's a slow burning, steady flame that makes a flavorful dish. Not because it's food, but because it burns slow and even, right?
And produces unbelievably little smoke.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Unbelievably little smoke, less than peat. Yeah. So, so there's, if you aren't going to commit to full sort of xeriscaping natural landscaping, understand that mulch is your best friend. Okay. Mulch is going to keep your soil workable. It's going to keep the moisture that you do get, it's going to retain it fully. My garden right now here in Cherryville is this little oasis that I walk across this hard pan, what had been a hayfield that's now kind of sort of a lawn, and the daisies are dying, the all heal is done, and I get to my garden and I step on the hay, the straw that is all around it, and my foot sinks.
Yeah.
I got moisture right here. And I don't water every single day because even though it's really hot, I want those plants to get their roots down,
Yeah,
So
that's really important. I don't think people understand. Most people think, oh, I have to water. and if you do that, you're really not helping the plant grow strong, deep roots, right?
Yeah, now where you are, where, you've got a south-facing slope, sandy soil,
And it runs off like crazy, right?
then definitely, a water once a day might be warranted, but not more than that, And again, you give it a good watering and you let things soak in thoroughly so that, you've got some roots in your plants. The other thing is to choose those varieties and those things that are going to do well in your climate. Like I gardened for years in northern Alberta, and I still see people waste their entire garden year trying to get a decent crop of tomatoes. Even in a really good year in the Peace Country, without a really good greenhouse, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So don't waste your time. Like if you've got space to plant a fruit tree in the Shuswap, don't make it an avocado.
Right. Or even, what am I going to peach? Don't do that.
Don't make it a late season peach.
No.
Like you can maybe make it an early season peach if you select carefully, but you're better off going with, a cherry or an apricot or a plum or an apple or, so, and it's the same, like if you're going to grow blueberries, you could get away with growing almost any type of high bush blueberry you wanted. But in a lot of places in the Shuswap in the interior where we're hit -20 and that, get yourself the right kind of blueberry bush. Get a half high, that is crossed back in with the wild blueberries. They don't get as big, but they crop out beautifully and they thrive in our climate.
I just like to put a little permaculture plug here because it's really valuable. So if you're new in your area and you're going to do a garden, certainly when we do permaculture instruction, we always go ahead of time and then visit all the local farmers. We ask who's really good at doing what, and they'll tell you who the next farmer is and the next farmer. And then that becomes who we learn from when we take the class. We take them to each farm because each farm has developed certain abilities that are unique to their area. So if you're new to your area, maybe go to your organic food market or and ask can I come to see your farm, right? And then you do the tour and see who's growing what. It'll give you a really good idea about what to do in your garden and how to do it. And most of those people that you talk to will be more than willing to share that information and will even probably give you plant material.
Oh, absolutely. And groups that have sprung up like the Young Agrarians, these are local farmers who are reaching out to the community, and they often have planned tours and things that you can take advantage of. And one of my first pieces of counsel that I give almost everybody when we start talking garden planning and landscaping and permaculture is really don't do anything for a year.
Right.
Put in your annuals, throw your pretty little flowers in, grow your annual vegetables and, but if you're going to plant a tree, if you're going to plant a shrub, if you're going to put in a hedge, give yourself a good year. Find out what's already there. I had a cousin buy a piece of property in the Castlegar area, and in the springtime, these bushes came up and she was, I think I'm going to, cut them down. I think I'm going to, and I was like, no, give them a year. And the following spring, she said, well, I realized that to take out those volunteer lilacs that, I thought were kind of scraggy looking last spring and replace them with anything is actually going to be hundreds of dollars. And not only did they look better by fall, they're coming up really thick this spring. And I think I kind of like these purple lilacs, She was thinking she needed something dressier, something.
Right. Well, there's nothing dressier in my world than a 16-foot high hedge of lilac. And
Yeah.
that's where I grew up in Robson, across from Castlegar. It was, you couldn't walk through that hedge. It was like gigantic. And oh my God, it's so beautiful. And the smell, it was incredible. And it was like, I don't know, 100 yards. I mean, it was gigantic hedge, right? You couldn't hear anybody go down the road, could hear the hedge, the road. You couldn't hear anybody hardly drive up that road.
Animals wouldn't get through it, and oh no, it was like, yeah, they're fabulous. And so, I encourage people to find out, what's growing there already, what's doing well, how it fits in. And then the next sort of thing that I encourage people to do around water conservation, around choice, is if you can't choose like a really native plant, get something as close as possible to that. For instance, if you want to plant an oak tree, well, the bur oak are kind of indigenous to all over Canada, and they're a short, scrubby oak. Well, if you can't get a bur oak, maybe look into getting a green oak. Don't try for a Gary oak, which are indigenous to Vancouver Island and just aren't going to make it. If you want to grow hazelnut trees, well, we do have indigenous ones, but they don't produce really well. But it's not a far step to plant a better hazelnut tree. If you want a food forest, think hazelnuts and hickories, not Chinese chestnuts and pine nut trees, which are a completely different climate. So, paying attention to that. And I think, so we've covered mulch, we've covered selection.
Xeriscaping we covered, which is important.
Yeah. Don't sprinkle.
Don't sprinkle.
Don't sprinkle. Like, if you absolutely 100% really feel like you have to sprinkle, do it at night.
Yeah, I mean, all the Russian gardens used to use what I call the putt-putt sprinkler, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't know, but that's what they used. But you would say that wastes a lot of water, right?
It does. And the bigger the sprinkler and the wider the radius that it throws the water, the higher percentage of water it wastes.
Right.
So when you see one of those big giant water cannons shooting out across acres and acres and acres, about 10 to 20% of that water might be actually getting to the ground. Yeah. I mean, it's especially in the height of the day with the sun and the evaporation and that. On a lawn green, or a golf green rather, you'll see in the middle of the day sprinklers pop up and sprinkle for like, a minute or two and then pop down again. That's to keep that grass looking lush and green. That's its only reason is to keep the tee box and the green looking lush and green. It really is not an effective way to grow good, hardy, sturdy plants. So sprinklers, they waste a lot of water. There's a lot of evaporation. If you do it at night, you might get as much as 60 to 70% of your water into the ground and on your plants. So that's way better than during the day. But soaker hoses with the holes down.
Yeah.
So not so they're going up in the air, but so that the holes are actually down against the ground. That's actually one of the most effective ways to get water to your plants.
Right.
And if you can install that soaker hose on a bed and then spread mulch over top of it,
right,
even better. And that is something that I do is once I get a plant, a bed planted, and I can serpentine a soaker hose in and around it. As the season progresses, I pile more and more and more mulch onto that soaker hose. So pretty soon you can't really see that there's a hose there, but all of the water is then being absorbed.
But you're talking about those soaker hoses, which has a hole every 3 or 4 inches, right? You're not talking about those piece of black rubber where, which never seemed to work for me, right? You know,
Oh, the Uzi hoses?
I don't know what they call
Oh,
it.
yeah,
They're absolute junk as far as I'm concerned.
they are.
Yeah.
They are.
Okay, when you said soaker hose before, I thought, oh, you're talking about that black crap. I'm never going to use that in garden because it widths an area for like 2 inches on either side of the hose, and that's it. You're really talking about the one that's got the holes every 4 or 5 inches all the way along, right?
Yeah,
And you turn them so that it's putting the water into the ground, not up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing that I was shown, if you want to learn water conservation, talk to people from Australia and Israel and other places like you've been in Africa and India where it's a real concern. And another really good method of getting water into the ground is not the T-tape, but the thinner irrigation line with the little nubs that you put on.
Yes.
And instead of attaching sprinklers, you use that irrigation line with blind ends that you don't quite connect properly, so they dribble.
Okay.
And that is a very effective, that is what is used almost exclusively in all the Saskatoon orchards and various vineyards that I saw in Alberta. It allows you to speed up or slow down the rate of drip in any one place. And it actually drips at a much better rate than the Uzi hose. So there's more of a chance of the soil absorbing it. And, we know how that works. Soil initially starts to repel water until a little bit of it starts to really absorb, and then it becomes the sponge, so the quicker you can get that water into the ground and absorbing, the less water you'll waste.
Well, I should have a consultation with you in the greenhouse because I have all the tubing and everything to do that delivery system. But, the way that it is you poke the different systems into the hose, right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is something different is you leave the blind end open, right? And then you regulate it with the tap, right?
Yeah, so you just use your connectors. You don't have any of the attachments.
Yeah.
You just don't shove the connectors in close together, so they just sort of create a constant little drip, 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 drip.
Right. And I guess that's be much easier to move out of the way to plant again, right? Than
way easier. Okay, and then paying attention to other things that you can do in your garden to kind of give them a break. I make little A-frame constructions out of lath or any kind of really cheap light wood that has a little bit of strength to it. I cover them with clear plastic for spring and fall use to extend my growing season. But at this time of year, I cover them with mesh or netting and create shade structures or things. Now, what this does is it allows a lot of the light and warmth through, but it retains some of the moisture. And so if you do this, if you set up a shade shelter in your backyard to use as sort of a picnic area, and you have a summer like this, you'll notice that as soon as you get in the shade shelter, you've got a nice soft green lawn because it hasn't baked out in the heat. Well, the same in your garden. If you're seeing heat stress on your plants, don't hesitate to net them. There's insect netting coverings that you can use to keep cabbage moths and that out of your brassicas. Well, they work incredibly well for keeping excessive heat off of your plants that are burning out in them. And so don't hesitate to create shade in your garden any more than you would hesitate to give your plants water if they need it.
Wow. Well, we do have in our system, we have, rods that you use for, tying for putting in concrete. We have short ones like this that you drive into the ground, and then we just take the black hoops of and blend it over, and then use clips. And now you can put plastic on it, or you can put like
netting.
shade cloth, and it works really, really well, right?
That kind of hoop creation is really fabulous. I would not have been able to grow about 60% of the things I successfully grew in the Peace Country had I not done the kind of row crop hoop
Right.
coverage. And doing it with the PVC pipe and rebar is like, it's brilliant. It's low cost, it's low construction hassle, it's low maintenance, it's easy to tear down and store. It can work equally as well for creating shade as it can for creating plastic cover to keep frost off of your plants. And
how long do you think that you're able to extend your garden for by using hoops? Got any idea?
2 to 3 weeks at either end of the season.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's my sense too.
So that gives you a month to a month and a half.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, especially for tomatoes. There's so many tomatoes that just, the frost is coming and they just need a little bit more, and that gives you that time to finish your tomato crop up without having to pull them all up.
Yeah. Well, for instance, in the Peace Country, I often didn't get frost free until the first week of June.
Right.
I often got frost by Labor Day weekend. You've got like 60 to 75 days in there. That's a short season.
Right.
You can extend that by 2 to 3 weeks in the springtime and 2 to 3 weeks in the fall. It's a godsend.
Yeah.
It's an absolute boon. And, think in terms, just as you would think in terms of shading your baby plants from frost or your almost ripe plants from frost, think in terms of shielding anything that is dying and burning out from the heat, with some shade cover, because it indeed can make all the difference in the world, and it will cut your water consumption hugely.
All right. Okay, great. So you would be able to get this from your whatever local garden store, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You can get crop netting from almost any garden, home and garden place.
That's what it's called, crop netting, right?
Some places it's called crop netting. Sometimes it's called insect netting.
Shade. Is it called shade sometimes?
You can get what is called shade cloth, and it will work as well.
But I guess insect is a good idea, because if it keeps some of the insects out, that's really helpful too, right?
Well, yeah, I did that with my brassicas this spring until my cabbages started to head up.
Yeah.
Because if you can get them to the head up stage, then it doesn't matter if you get a few of the bugs here and there on the outside. They aren't embedded where they're going to eat out the whole center of your cabbage, which of course I have had happen.
Right.
Yeah. One year I got a shade shelter to use as sort of a picnic area. And there was a problem, and when I requested a replacement of something from the company, they actually sent me an entire set of the shade cloth panels, of the netted panels. So I had a surfeit of them, and I found that they were fabulous to cover things with, to provide them with shade, because this was in up on the bench in Armstrong, so super hot summers at times, and that. But I also found out that just that little bit of coverage also cut the risk from frost for about 2 to 3 degrees.
Right.
So it's very useful to have like netting, crop netting, insect netting. It has a variety of names. It doesn't matter if it's white or if it's black. It really doesn't matter. It lets the sun through.
Yeah, and we should really have that on our greenhouse so that everything doesn't cook in there, right?
Glass greenhouses do sometimes have that problem of too much being let in. They get too hot. They get too much UV. If people are building greenhouses, I usually recommend that they look into the cost and the benefits of a product called Coroplast.
Yeah.
It looks like corrugated cardboard, but it's made out of plastic, and you can get clear, which isn't really clear. It's kind of milky colored. But it was developed for the greenhouse industry, and it lets in the maximum amount of heat and light that you need without going over it. So you never scorch your plants in a greenhouse. It's really quite nice. It also stands up incredibly well. The first greenhouse I made with it, we didn't know what we were doing. We attached it all wrong. We had to tear it all apart and reattach it and do all sorts of things. The wind ripped it off of the posts the way we had it attached and tore it all up, and we had to retrim it. And oh God, we thought we'd wrecked it. 11 years later, we took it off and replaced it and did it properly. Now, I think a botched job that gives you 11 years of service is like pretty good statement for the quality of the product. Right. And I do know of one greenhouse that was part of Beaver Lumber in Grand Prairie, made out of Coroplast, that was demolished 21 years later, and the Coroplast was still usable.
Wow, great.
So yes, it's expensive, but it's a long-term investment, you know. And Coroplast can indeed create you little shade shelters. It's actually incredibly easy to work with because it's nice and rigid. You can actually just duct tape it together.
Triangle.
Yeah, you got it. Like it is one of the best cheater things that you can get for your garden is a couple of sheets of Coroplast that you're going to just kind of cut up and use here and there where you need it, to replace a window, to be a greenhouse panel, to create a little shade area, to give yourself some protection from frost. It's actually quite usable, and being so lightweight and easy to deal with is just a real boon.
So I come in 4 by 8 sheets usually, or?
Yeah, 4 by 8 sheets, yeah. So another good way to get water, if you can't do actual drip line, is to make yourself a lot of drip units. Now, the ultra cheap water bottles are one of the best things to do with this. You can fill these water bottles up and pierce multiple little holes with a large darning needle in them and place them in your garden near those places that dry out very rapidly, and it will drip very, very, very slowly and keep the soil moist that way. This is also one of my favorite techniques for using planters or hanging baskets, is to bury the water bottle in the center of the soil with the top exposed so that you can literally just pour the water right into the bottle, fill it up with soil around it, and do your planting around it. Nobody ever notices the bottle in the middle, especially in a hanging basket. But even in a ground planter, I've never really had people notice them once the plants get going. And then all you have to do is fill that bottle, and it's going to drip into the soil. It's not going to wash it away in a giant flood. Watering too fast and too hard in the dry is bad. It just doesn't work well. And you see that in a sudden rainstorm. It looks like a whole lot came down, and you go out and you check the soil, and half an inch under it's bone dry. Well, what happened? Slow and gentle, slow and gentle, slow and gentle is really the best way with water. Also for hanging baskets and smaller plants and that, chunks of ice. I'll freeze ice in muffin tins so that I've got a fair sized disc of ice and drop them in like a plant pot the size of the ones with the begonias and petunias in it.
Yeah.
You probably need 2 of those, and that would be it for the day.
Yeah, and don't forget that, if you were going to do your orchids, that's the only way you water them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
an ice cube every once in a while.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to do African violets, water them from the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a forest floor plant. They never see the sun. They never get rain dropped on them. They absorb everything up through their roots. So water them from the bottom.
What about an orchid? Do you put the ice on the top of the orchid? I guess you have to, right?
Yeah, you put it off to, yeah, you just put it on the soil kind of off to one side.
On one side, yeah.
Yeah, it melts. And again, the orchid will, you don't want to overwater certain things. Also, I tend to put, I tend to water heavily around, I tend to water very heavily around my reptile and toad habitats that we've talked about in the past. So, overturned flower pots, things that you've already created, like a little shade zone, and that I tend to make sure that those get a fair bit of water when I'm watering, because they will retain water. And they will also keep those animals that are so vital to your garden alive. And believe it or not, those animals in and of themselves do a certain amount of kind of carrying things to your garden. They don't necessarily carry water, but they burrow, they dig, they make little channels, they make areas where water can kind of pool up and be out of that direct sun. One of our Lois just has asked us if we think that compost tea ice cubes would work. And, you would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone with compost tea. I'd want to be very careful how I balanced it in my freezer and let it freeze, because I certainly wouldn't want it spilt on anything that I was later going to wish to unwrap and eat. But what a great idea, really. It's a great idea. And I love this. I love it when people come up with ideas, because believe me, everything that I'm telling you and everything I'm sharing wasn't all generated here.
No, from friends and family and other people that do the same work and sharing and storytelling. Oh my goodness, right?
Yeah, well, like this episode alone, I have drawn on, research done by John McVicker, research done by my friend Aaron Bromeister, permaculture work that you've turned me on to, food foresting work that I've got at least 4 or 5 mentors that have had input into, Mary Thomas, Russell Willier, 2 or 3 other native, both Cree and Shishwemic elders and teachers. Knowledge is always welcome, and it comes from an amazing number of sources, and sometimes some of the most unlikely sources. So I truly love it when
community is a community bank of information, right?
Yeah, that's the point of this show. I mean, we really like to bring it up to a much more formally presented, polished thing when we're doing the videos in the inner garden circle and that. But the whole point of this show, in my mind, is for it to be a lovely sharing forum of things that people know that they're interested in, and that we can ultimately all really benefit and embellish our knowledge with.
Yes, and inspire people to grow their own food.
Indeed. So, Yeah, conserving water, another thing to keep in mind with water is temperature. If you're watering directly from a well or directly from a city water source, you might be putting unbelievably ice cold water on plants that are really, really struggling in the heat. You do this in the heat of the day, and man, can you create havoc. So if you're using well water or city water and you're not settling it out in barrels and containers so that you can use it in a gravity feed system or a hand watering system, if you're just pouring it right from the tap onto the garden, please, please do wait till evening to do that. Please do wait, or early in the morning. Don't do it to your plants when they're in the heat of the day. There's a story in our family about a relative who was working on a crane in a glass booth high up along the coastline on a early summer day, and at the end of his shift he came out of the crane booth and was like, oh, that's fabulous, and he dove right into the water, which actually was the Bering Sea. And in May the Bering Sea is still incredibly cold, and the dive killed him.
Wow.
Stopped his heart, the difference between his body temperature and the water temperature, and wham. And you can do that to your plants. They're struggling in the heat. You throw an incredible amount of ice cold water on them, you can actually cause some of their shells to shatter and to send them into massive distress. So please don't do that to your plants. Like if you're going to be using cold tap water morning or evening, please not in the height of the day.
Yeah, and don't do that to yourself either, by the way. It's always better to have body temperature water, certainly to start off your day. The medicinal benefits of body temperature water first thing in the morning is the list is incredible.
And the sun tea is really good that way, and straight cold water is a bad idea for the belly when you're overheated. Warmed up water, ginger tea is fabulous. I have a whole recipe for switchels and other drinks that they had where they served to haying crews and that over the years to, so you could take in water, you didn't get stomach cramps, you got a hit of sugar, you got a hit of salt, you got, the traditions of, putting berries in the water, putting ginger in the water, all of these were ways so that people out there working in the hot sun weren't going to throw their bodies into absolute distress by doing what they thought they wanted to do, which is chug a whole lot of ice cold water.
Right, and put your body in shock.
It does. Turns your belly inside out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we got 1 more minute to go. I don't know where all the time went yet again. So where are we going next week? What are we going to do?
I think next week we're going to start looking at maybe utilizing a little bit more of the harvest, talking about some of the things that we can do with what we're bringing, ways of preserving this food, ways of carrying it into the fall and winter for us so that we can make the most of nature's bounty while it's being presented to us.
Oh, that sounds like an important body of information to know. And so in the inner circle and the circle, what are you going to be doing your videos about? Have you given
Well, I made this promise to a very elegant looking silver-haired gentleman who desperately wishes to learn how to can beans.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that in this next coming up round of videos, we're going to be getting out of the garden a little bit and into the kitchen and into the drying room and into some of the other things, and we can do some real get really
how to deal with the harvest, right?
How to deal with the harvest. Thank you. I was stumbling for words.
I know, I was helping you.
Yes, well, you harvested my thought and came up with the right word.
All right, everybody, it's the top of the hour. Have a great time in the garden. Remember, it's really hot, and here it's really smoky, so be gentle on yourself.
Yeah, stay hydrated.
Don't put cold water on your garden. And if you insist on watering that way or sprinkling, do it in the middle of the night. And in the meantime, take care of yourself. Be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And a healthy garden makes for healthy people.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye everyone.